I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. My name is Mark, and I live in a small suburban town where everyone knows everyone. For the past 10 years, I thought I had it all: a stable job, a decent house, and a beautiful wife named Jessica. We had our share of ups and downs like any couple, but I genuinely believed we were in a good place, until everything changed. It started with little things: Jessica coming home late from her yoga class, or the way she'd suddenly become secretive about her phone. I brushed it off as paranoia. After all, we were both busy and it was just a phase. But then the changes became more noticeable. She started dressing nicer for those yoga sessions, wearing clothes that made her look like she was going out on the town rather than to unwind. When I asked her about it, she just waved me off, saying I was overthinking everything. But deep down, I could feel something was off. I remember one evening, I was in the kitchen making dinner when I overheard her on the phone. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I caught snippets of her conversation. She was laughing and giggling, saying things like, "I can't wait to see you again, and you make me feel so alive." My stomach dropped. Who was she talking to? The old Mark would have shrugged it off as harmless fun, but now every little thing felt like a red flag. One day I decided to do a little digging. I'm not proud of it, but I checked her phone while she was in the shower. I found a series of texts between Jessica and someone named Dr. Mike. My heart raced. "Dr. Mike, our family doctor." I read through the messages, heart pounding in my chest. They were flirty, intimate, and downright inappropriate. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. How could she do this to me, to us? I confronted her that night. I remember sitting her down, my hands trembling. "Jessica, I found messages between you and Dr. Mike. What's going on?" I could see the color drain from her face, and for a split second I hoped she'd come clean. Instead, she looked at me like I had just accused her of murder. "Mark, you're being ridiculous. It's just a professional relationship. You're reading too much into it," she shot back, her voice rising with defensiveness. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I pushed her further and she eventually broke down, only to give me the most absurd excuses. "He's just a friend. You know how I get when I'm stressed about work, and he's been so supportive." The words felt like daggers. I wanted to scream, to shake her until she gave me the truth. But the more she talked, the more I realized she was lying. I had seen the way she looked at him during our last visit to the clinic, the way she had brushed her hand against his while he checked her blood pressure. I knew then that this was more than just a casual relationship. It was an affair, and I was on the receiving end of her deceit. As the reality of the situation hit me, a wave of emotions crashed over me: anger, betrayal, confusion. I could feel my heart racing and my hands shaking. How could she do this to me? I thought we were building a life together. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, ready to plunge into the abyss below. I needed time to process everything. I didn't say much after the confrontation. The truth was, I didn't know what to say. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of emotions, and I had to find a way to swim back to the surface. I spent the next few days in a haze, grappling with the betrayal and the pain of realizing that the woman I loved was not who I thought she was. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. This wasn't just about my marriage, it was about justice. I had to come up with a plan, not just to heal but to make sure Dr. Mike faced the consequences of his actions. After all, he was supposed to be a healer, someone I trusted with my family's health. I just needed to figure out how to make that happen. I spent the next few days in a fog, consumed by thoughts of betrayal and revenge. My mind raced with countless scenarios, and the more I replayed Jessica's words in my head, the angrier I became. She had the audacity to lie to my face about her affair with Dr. Mike, and I knew I had to take action. I just had to be smart about it. First, I needed to gather evidence. I started by documenting everything: every text message, every call, every suspicious trip she made. I went through her phone again, this time with a more strategic approach. I found more conversations, and they were worse than I had imagined. Flirty banter turned into explicit discussions about their meetups and what they planned to do when they were alone. I felt like I was collecting pieces of a puzzle that revealed a picture I never wanted to see. After gathering enough evidence, I decided to confront Dr. Mike directly. It was a risky move, but I had to let him know I wasn't going to sit idly by while he destroyed my marriage. I scheduled an appointment under the pretext of needing a checkup, and when I walked into the clinic, my heart raced with anticipation and anger. The waiting room was surprisingly empty, and I was ushered into the examination room quickly. I sat there, heart pounding, trying to think of what I would say. Dr. Mike walked in looking as charismatic and confident as ever, flashing his charming smile. "Hey there, Mark. Good to see you. What brings you in today?" His relaxed demeanor infuriated me. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "Actually, I'm not here for a checkup. I need to talk to you about Jessica," I said, my voice steady but laced with anger. He frowned, momentarily caught off guard. "Jessica? What about her?" He played dumb, but I could see the slight shift in his confidence. I could almost sense his heart rate quickening. I leaned forward, locking my gaze with his. "I know about the affair, the texts, the calls, everything. You think I'm going to let you get away with this? You're a family doctor. You're supposed to help people, not ruin their lives." His expression morphed from surprise to a tight-lipped smile. "Mark, I think you're misunderstanding the nature of our relationship. Jessica and I—" "Cut the crap, Mike," I interrupted, my anger bubbling over. "You're a disgrace to your profession." I could see the color drain from his face. He stammered for a moment, trying to come up with something to say, but I continued. "You're lucky I'm not going to expose this to everyone right now, but know this. I'm going to ensure you face the consequences of your actions. You may be a doctor, but you're also a cheat, and I'll make sure the world knows what you really are." With that, I stormed out of the office, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I felt empowered for the first time since discovering Jessica's betrayal. I was determined to take control of this situation, and I knew that Dr. Mike's career was my target. The following days were filled with planning. I reached out to other patients I knew who had visited Dr. Mike, gathering stories about their experiences. I watched and listened, piecing together information that would help me build a case against him. I was meticulous, ensuring that every detail was documented. I also started talking to a lawyer about my options. I didn't want to jump into divorce proceedings just yet. I wanted to make sure that my plan was in place before I decided how to confront Jessica again. I needed a strategy that would hit both her and Dr. Mike where it hurt most, their reputations. As I prepared for the next steps, I also made sure to keep my distance from Jessica. I couldn't bear to look at her without feeling sick to my stomach. The guilt of betrayal loomed over her, but I wasn't in the mood for her excuses anymore. The anger I felt towards her was gradually transforming into a steely resolve. I couldn't allow her to manipulate me again. Eventually, it came time for me to execute my plan. I had collected enough evidence against Dr. Mike that I felt confident in filing a complaint with the medical board. The thought of exposing him made me feel a rush of satisfaction. He had crossed a line, and now it was time for him to pay the price. As I finalized the complaint, I couldn't help but think about how this would affect Jessica. Once she found out what I was doing, her facade would crumble. I wondered how she would react. Would she lash out, beg for forgiveness, or would she finally own up to her actions? Either way, I was ready to face whatever consequences came my way. Only time would tell what effect this would all have on our lives, but one thing was certain: I was no longer a victim. I was taking back control, and I was going to make sure justice was served, no matter the cost. The day I filed the complaint against Dr. Mike, I felt a mix of anxiety and exhilaration. I remember sitting in my car outside the medical board's office, the weight of my decision settling in my stomach. I had gathered all the evidence, meticulously documented every interaction, and now it was out of my hands. I couldn't help but think about the repercussions this would have, not only for Dr. Mike but for Jessica as well. For the next few days, I kept my distance from Jessica. I went through the motions at home, work, chores, and barely speaking to her. I could feel the tension in the air. She must have sensed something was off, but I wasn't ready to let her in on my plans just yet. I wanted to look like I was still in the dark, while in reality, I was meticulously orchestrating my revenge. As the week progressed, I noticed a change in her behavior. Jessica began to act more anxious, glancing at her phone. frequently and often asking me about my day. It was as if she was trying to gauge my mood, and though I wanted to confront her directly, I held back. I needed her to feel the impending dread of what was coming for her. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I heard her sobbing in the other room. My first instinct was to feel a flicker of empathy, but then I remembered everything she had put me through. I opted to ignore her tears, focusing instead on the task at hand. I chopped vegetables with a steady rhythm, channeling my anger into something productive. When I finally decided to confront her again, it wasn't under the circumstances I had imagined. I had just returned from a gym session, feeling drained but determined. As I entered the house, I found Jessica sitting on the couch, her face buried in her hands. "What's wrong?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. She looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy. "Mark, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for things to get out of control," she whimpered. I just, I felt so lost, and I thought I could find comfort with someone who understood me. Her words felt like daggers, but I knew this was a moment I could use to my advantage. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "You mean comfort with Dr. Mike? Is that what you're saying?" Her expression shifted, panic flashing across her face. "Mark, please, I was going to tell you, but I was scared. I thought you'd leave me. I never wanted to hurt you." I couldn't contain my anger any longer. "You thought. You thought it was okay to sleep with my family doctor. You thought it was okay to lie to my face for weeks." I stepped closer, my voice rising with each word. "You were so wrapped up in your own guilt that you never once thought about how much this would destroy me." I watched as she shrank back, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mark, please, I was weak. It was a mistake. I love you." Her proclamations fell flat. I had heard those words too many times, and they had lost their meaning. "You love me. Is that why you were planning your next rendezvous with him? You think I'm going to believe that?" I pressed, feeling a surge of indignation. She tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled away. "I can't even look at you right now, Jessica. You've broken my trust, and I don't know if I can ever get it back." The silence that followed was heavy. I knew she was waiting for me to say something, to tell her I was willing to work through this. But I couldn't. I had made a decision, and now it was time to face the consequences together. Days passed, and I continued to gather more information. I reached out to a few other patients who had been to Dr. Mike, sharing my experience and asking if they had ever felt uncomfortable or had similar encounters. To my surprise, several people had their own stories of encounters that felt inappropriate. I was building a case, not only against Dr. Mike, but also against Jessica for her role in all this. I knew I needed to show her just how serious I was about my plan. So I devised a strategy to bring everything crashing down around her. One evening, I invited Jessica to a quiet dinner at home. I set the table, lit candles, and tried to create a serene atmosphere, though my heart was racing with anticipation. She walked in, her eyes lighting up with surprise. "Wow, this looks nice," she said, a tentative smile on her lips. As we sat down to eat, I maintained a calm exterior, but inside the storm was brewing. "Jessica, I've been thinking a lot about us and our future," I began, choosing my words carefully. "I wanted to let you know that I'm taking steps to ensure that Dr. Mike faces the consequences of his actions." Her face fell. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaking. "I've spoken to the medical board, and I'm not the only one with complaints. I've gathered evidence that will ensure he loses his practice," I stated, watching her reaction closely. "And I'm not stopping there. I'm going to make sure the truth is known about you as well." The color drained from her face, and for the first time I could see genuine fear in her eyes. "You wouldn't do that," she whispered, but it was more a question than a statement. "Oh, I absolutely will. You have no idea how many people are outraged by what he did. And now that I've brought it to light, you're implicated in this too. You thought you could keep it all a secret, but I'm not letting that happen." Her outburst was immediate, a mixture of anger and desperation. "Mark, please, you can't do this to me. I messed up, but I love you. I'll do anything to make it right." But her pleas fell on deaf ears. I had made my decision, and now it was time for her to face the reality of her actions. I was done being the passive victim in this situation. As the evening wore on, I could see the walls start to close in on her, her facade cracking under the weight of the truth. I had won this round, but I knew there was still a long way to go. The next phase of my plan was to ensure that both Jessica and Dr. Mike faced the consequences of their betrayal. I had no intention of backing down now. Justice was coming, and I was ready to see it through to the end. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions as I faced the fallout from my confrontation with Jessica. I had thrown a bomb into our already fragile relationship, and it felt as if everything was shifting beneath my feet. Despite her pleas for forgiveness, I remained resolute, knowing that both she and Dr. Mike needed to face the consequences of their actions. I kept my distance from Jessica, but the tension in the house was palpable. She tried to reach out to me, making small gestures like cooking dinner or attempting to engage in casual conversation, but I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. Each time I looked at her, I was reminded of her lies and her betrayal. There was a heaviness in the air, a sense of impending doom that neither of us could escape. Meanwhile, I sharpened my strategy against Dr. Mike. I had already filed the complaint, but I needed to make sure I collected more testimonies from other patients. I reached out on social media, posting in local community groups and asking if anyone had experienced uncomfortable interactions with him. The response was overwhelming. I quickly discovered that I wasn't alone in this fight. Several patients reached out to me, sharing their stories of feeling dismissed or uncomfortable during appointments with Dr. Mike. I listened intently, documenting everything meticulously. Each account added fuel to my fire, and I began to see a pattern. This wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was a recurring theme that pointed to a larger issue. One night, as I sat at the kitchen table, organizing the evidence I had collected, Jessica walked in. She looked weary, her eyes puffy and red from crying. "Mark, we need to talk," she said, her voice trembling. I looked up from my papers, my expression neutral. "About what?" "About us. You have to know that I'm willing to do anything to fix this. I'm so sorry for what happened with Dr. Mike. I got caught up in the moment and I regret it every day. I want to go to counseling, whatever it takes," she pleaded, her voice breaking. I took a deep breath, weighing her words. Part of me wanted to believe her, to hope that she could change. But the other part of me, the one that had been betrayed and shattered, was firm in its resolve. "Counseling won't change what you did, Jessica. You made a choice. You chose to betray me." She flinched at my words, and I could see the guilt wash over her. "I know, and I can't take it back, but I want to make it right. I'll do anything for you, Mark. Just please don't go through with this." I shook my head, feeling a mixture of sadness and determination. "I need to see consequences for what you both did. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about holding you accountable and making sure Dr. Mike can't hurt anyone else." Her face fell and she looked defeated. "So, you're really going to ruin my life over this?" I felt a pang of guilt at the thought of her suffering, but it was overshadowed by the righteousness of my cause. "You did that to yourself. You had every opportunity to stop this and chose not to." As the days passed, I continued my campaign against Dr. Mike. I contacted the medical board multiple times, insisting they take my complaint seriously. I could feel the walls closing in on him as more patients came forward, sharing their experiences with the board. I was the only one who had felt wronged. I was merely the catalyst that brought it all to light. Then came the day I received an email from the medical board, requesting a formal interview regarding my complaint. I couldn't believe it. This was the moment I had been waiting for. It felt like a victory, but it also reminded me of the gravity of what I was doing. I would be putting Dr. Mike's career on the line, and I didn't take that lightly. However, I also felt a sense of justice. He had taken advantage of his position and hurt others. When the day of the interview arrived, I felt a mix of apprehension and determination. I walked into the board's office, a sense of purpose driving me forward. As I sat in front of the panel, I recounted everything I had experienced, the evidence I had gathered, and the testimonies of others who had suffered under Dr. Mike's care. The panel listened attentively, occasionally asking questions to clarify details. I could see the gravity of the situation reflected in their expressions, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me as I laid everything bare. This was my chance to ensure that the truth was heard and that Dr. Mike would be held accountable for his actions. After the interview, I was filled with an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. I had done what I set out to do. I had taken the first steps toward exposing the truth and forcing justice upon the people who had hurt me. But as I left the board's office, I felt a heavy weight on my shoulders. I had also taken steps to destroy Jessica's life, and that reality was hard to reconcile. When I returned home, I found Jessica sitting on the couch, her eyes red and puffy again. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice trembling. I looked at her, the truth hanging heavily in the air. "I told them everything. It's in their hands now," I replied, my tone flat. She looked as if I had slapped her. "So you really did it? You're going to ruin him and me?" I could feel my anger flaring again. "You had your chance to stop this. You made your choices, and now you have to face the consequences." Tears streamed down her face. "I'm so scared, Mark. I don't want to lose you. I thought we could work through this." I sighed, realizing that we were at a crossroads. "I don't know if we can go back to what we had. Trust is broken, and it'll take more than words to fix it." As I stood there watching her weep, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I couldn't fix what had happened, and I wasn't sure if I even wanted to try. But I was determined to see this through. Both Jessica and Dr. Mike had hurt me in ways I couldn't fully articulate, and now it was time for them to face the music. With a heavy heart, I returned to my seat at the kitchen table and looked down at the evidence I had collected. The battle wasn't over yet, and I knew the real fight was just beginning. I had set the wheels in motion for justice, and there was no turning back now. As the weeks unfolded after my meeting with the medical board, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I knew the wheels of justice were in motion, but the wait was agonizing. The board had promised to investigate my claims, but I had no idea how long it would take or what the outcome would be. Every day, I would check my email, hoping for updates, while simultaneously dreading the thought of what could happen next. Jessica, on the other hand, was in a constant state of turmoil. I could see it in her eyes. The fear and guilt were etched on her face. She tried to engage with me to talk about our future, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on the precipice of a decision that would change everything. One evening, after another long day of waiting, I found Jessica sitting on the porch, staring off into the distance. I walked outside, drawn by her stillness. "You okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual even though my heart was racing. She looked up at me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'm just scared, Mark. I don't know what's going to happen with Dr. Mike, and I don't know what's going to happen with us." I took a deep breath, trying to choose my words carefully. "You had a choice, Jessica. You made your decisions, and now we're dealing with the fallout. I'm not saying I don't care about you, but what you did was unforgivable." Her body language shifted. She slumped forward, shoulders hunched. "I know. I keep thinking about how I can make it right, but I feel so lost. Everything feels broken." I could feel the tension between us, a palpable mixture of unresolved feelings and raw emotion. "What do you want, Jessica?" I asked, my voice softer now. "Do you want to fix this? Do you want to fight for our marriage?" She looked up, her expression shifting from despair to hope. "I do. I want to fight for us, but I need to know you're in this too. Can't we find a way to heal together?" I shook my head slowly. "I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. I need to see that you're serious about changing, about making amends. But you also have to face the consequences of your actions." Her face fell again, and I could see the realization dawning on her. That I wasn't ready to forgive her, that I wasn't willing to pretend everything was okay. "I'm so scared of losing you," she whispered. The conversation hung in the air, heavy with unspoken words and unresolved tension. I wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be all right, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I had to stay strong, for both of our sakes. The next few days passed in a blur. I found myself consumed with thoughts of how to proceed with the medical board's investigation. I spent hours on the phone with other patients who shared their experiences, gathering their testimonies and ensuring we had a united front. It felt good to have a purpose, to channel my anger and hurt into something productive. Then one afternoon I received a call from the medical board. My heart raced as I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hello, this is Mark," I said. "Mr. Johnson, this is Dr. Hargrove from the medical board. We appreciate your patience during our investigation. We've gathered a substantial amount of evidence regarding your claims against Dr. Mike. My breath caught in my throat. What does that mean? It means we are taking this very seriously. We've scheduled a hearing to discuss the evidence and determine the next steps. You will be required to attend, and we will contact you with the details. I felt a mix of relief and dread wash over me. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. Thank you for the update, I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. As I hung up, a wave of anxiety washed over me. I knew this would be a pivotal moment, not just for Dr. Mike, but for Jessica and me as well. I had set this in motion, and now I had to see it through. I spent the next few days preparing for the hearing. I reviewed all my evidence, ensuring I could present my case clearly and effectively. I reached out to the other patients who would be testifying, ensuring we were all on the same page. The reality of what I was doing began to sink in. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about accountability. On the day of the hearing, I arrived at the medical board's office early, my heart pounding in my chest. As I walked into the building, I felt a mixture of confidence and fear. This was the moment I had been waiting for, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it would change everything for me and Jessica. I sat in the waiting room, anxiously tapping my foot as I waited for my name to be called. I spotted Dr. Mike across the room, sitting with his attorney. He looked nervous, a stark contrast to the confident demeanor he usually exuded. I felt a rush of satisfaction at the sight of him squirming, but I also recognized that this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about all of us. When my name was finally called, I stood up, straightening my shoulders. I walked into the hearing room where a panel of medical board members sat poised to hear my testimony. I took a deep breath, focusing on the task ahead. As I presented my case, detailing the evidence I had gathered, I could feel the gravity of the situation weighing down on me. The panel asked questions, probing deeper into my claims, and I answered each one with as much clarity as I could muster. I could see their expressions shifting as I recounted my experience with Dr. Mike, and I knew that my words were resonating with them. When I finished, I stepped back and waited for the panel to deliberate. For a moment, everything felt surreal. I had laid it all out there, the truth about my pain, the betrayal from both Jessica and Dr. Mike, and the need for justice. As I left the hearing room, I could feel the weight of the world on my shoulders. I had fought for what I believed in, but I also knew that this wouldn't be the end. I still had to face Jessica and help her understand the consequences of her actions. When I returned home, I found her waiting for me, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, preparing to face the fallout. "It went well. They're taking the evidence seriously, and there will be consequences for Dr. Mike," I replied, my tone measured. Her face paled, and I could see her processing what this meant for both of them. "What about us? What happens now?" I looked at her, feeling a mix of sadness and determination. "I don't know. I need time to think. We're facing the consequences of our actions, and I can't rush into anything. I need to figure out what I want moving forward." Her expression fell, but I could see a glimmer of understanding in her eyes. "I just want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes, Mark. I want to fix this." As I stood there, my heart heavy with uncertainty, I realized that while I had taken steps toward justice, the path to healing would be long and complicated. I didn't know what the future held for us, but I was ready to confront whatever came next. The fight for justice was just the beginning, and now I had to navigate the tumultuous waters of rebuilding trust, if that was even possible. After the hearing, life settled into a strange rhythm. There was still a palpable tension in the air, but now it felt like a shared burden. Jessica and I had become reluctant allies, both reeling from the fallout of her actions and the impending consequences for Dr. Mike. While I was focused on the path to justice, she seemed determined to win back my trust, but the journey was fraught with challenges. Days turned into weeks, and the medical board continued their investigation. While I waited for their decision, I found myself reflecting on everything that had transpired: the betrayal, the confrontation, the fight for accountability. I often replayed those moments in my mind, trying to find clarity in the chaos. During this time, Jessica made genuine efforts to prove her commitment to our marriage. She attended counseling sessions on her own and encouraged me to join her. I was hesitant at first, unsure if I was ready to unpack the emotional baggage that had accumulated. But as time passed, I realized that if there was any hope of salvaging our relationship, it would require open communication and a willingness to confront the painful truths. One evening, we sat down together after dinner. Jessica looked at me with determination in her eyes. "Mark, I want to make this work. I understand if you're not ready to forgive me, but I'm committed to doing the work necessary to heal. I know I messed up, but I want to show you that I can change." I appreciated her honesty, but the prospect of rebuilding our relationship felt overwhelming. "It's going to take time, Jessica. Trust doesn't just come back overnight. I need to be sure this isn't just words," I replied, my voice steady. "I get that," she answered, her sincerity evident. "I'm willing to put in the effort. I'll do whatever it takes." As we began attending counseling sessions together, I started to see a different side of her. Each session was emotionally charged as we navigated through our feelings of betrayal, insecurity, and pain. It was challenging, and I often found myself wrestling with memories of her infidelity. But gradually, I began to see the work she was putting in and the commitment she had to change. Meanwhile, I remained in contact with the medical board, checking on the progress of their investigation. Then came the fateful day when I received another email from them. My heart raced as I opened it, and I could barely contain my excitement and anxiety. "Dear Mr. Johnson, we appreciate your patience during our investigation. After reviewing the evidence submitted and testimonies from other patients, we have decided to suspend Dr. Mike's medical license pending further review of his conduct. We take these matters very seriously and assure you that we will continue to investigate thoroughly." I couldn't believe it. Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. Justice was being served, but a part of me still felt conflicted. While I had sought revenge, I never wanted to see someone's career destroyed, even if they had wronged me. Nonetheless, I knew this was necessary, not just for me, but for all the patients who might have been affected by his unethical behavior. That evening, I sat down with Jessica to share the news. "They suspended Dr. Mike's license," I told her, feeling a mix of triumph and unease. Her expression was a blend of shock and concern. "Wow, I can't believe it, but what does that mean for us?" "It means he's facing consequences for his actions, and hopefully it will send a message to others in his position," I replied. Jessica nodded, her brow furrowing. "But are you okay? Is this helping you?" I took a deep breath, contemplating my response. "It is helping me, but I still have a long way to go. I need to process everything that's happened. I need to be sure that I'm doing this for the right reasons and not just out of anger." She reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "I want to support you through this, Mark. I care about you and I want to help you heal." Slowly but surely, we began to navigate the complexities of our relationship. The journey wasn't easy, and there were days when I felt overwhelmed by resentment and pain. But there were also moments of connection, shared laughter, deep conversations, and the gradual rebuilding of trust. During this process, I learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means acknowledging the hurt and choosing to move forward. I still had lingering doubts and insecurities, but I was willing to work through them, for my sake and for Jessica. As the months passed, we continued our counseling sessions, and I found myself becoming more open to the idea of healing. I realized that while Jessica had made a terrible mistake, she was also trying to make amends. I began to see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who was willing to fight for our marriage. Ultimately, I decided to not only confront the past but also to embrace the future. I understood that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but I was learning to trust myself again. As we sat together one evening watching the sunset from our porch, I turned to Jessica and smiled. "You know, I didn't think we'd make it this far," I admitted. She smiled back, her eyes glistening with hope. "Neither did I, but we're still here, and I believe we can get through this together." In that moment, I felt a flicker of optimism. It wasn't a guarantee of success, nor a promise that everything would be perfect, but it was a step toward healing, growth, and a future that was uncertain but filled with potential. As we faced the unknown together, I realized that the journey we were on was just beginning. We had both learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and the strength it takes to rebuild what was broken. The fight for justice had been a significant chapter in my life, but now I found myself ready to embrace the possibility of a new beginning.